Miami Heat have been having a rough go of it this season. They've lost their fifth straight game, this time in an 18-point comeback to a Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Patrick Beverley-less Clippers teams. And the Heat are now 6-12 on the season. They've been playing some really pathetic basketball, and the team that surprised everybody and emerged as one of the best teams in the NBA this past season are now 13th in the Eastern Conference and struggling to find their way. And everybody's wondering why. Everybody thought that, wow, this team has a lot of young developing players, and if they're already in the finals at this point, they surely will be finals contenders next season as they continue to develop and get better. And that really just hasn't been the case with the Miami Heat. They've really struggled this season for, reasons that could be any number of things, to be truthful with you. And people like to debate on what that is, but the reality is that it's probably a combination of a lot of things. And the more and more I see the Heat play, the more I think that it's just the fact that they're not playing good defense at all. We'll get into some of the stats here later, but it's really a combination of things as to why the Heat are performing so poorly. What is wrong with the Miami Heat? Originally I thought it was just the fact that they were tired. I mean, you get, in comparison to the 4 months off minimum that you would get, say, if you play in the finals every single season in the NBA, you get 4 months of an off season before you have to start back up. And that's if you make the finals. Teams that don't make the playoffs, teams that, get bounced early in the playoffs, they have 6 to 7 months, 5 to 7 months of an off season. This season, the Miami Heat only got 2 months of an off season. That's not sufficient rest for the amount of basketball being played in that time span. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe the Miami Heat are just tired, they're gassed. The finals ended on October 11th, and the new season started on December 23rd, I believe. So again, not a long turnaround for the NBA this season. But, the more and more I look around the league, it's like, well, that's not really much of an excuse if they're tired, because out of all the teams that participated in the bubble, the Heat have the worst record out of all of them, at 6-12. The only team that participated in the bubble, especially in the Eastern Conference, that has a worse record than the Heat are the Wizards at 3-11. And there are some other Western Conference teams that have about the same record as the Heat, but the Heat have the worst record out of pretty much every single team that participated in the bubble. And even more so, the 4 teams that competed in the conference finals for both the Eastern and Western Conference, they have better records than the Heat as well. The Lakers are 14-6, the Nuggets are 11-7, the Celtics are 10-7, and then there's the Heat, which are way under 500 at 6-12. So I don't know how much of an excuse being tired actually is. So, originally I thought, hey, maybe they're just tired. And sure, I'm sure that fatigue definitely is playing a factor, but it's not the first it's not the most important factor. It's not the biggest factor. The Heat have also been without their 2 best players on the team, arguably. Let me change that. They've been without 2 out of the 3 of their best players. Bam Adebayo has been playing pretty much every single game this season, and he is their newly extended young star at the center position. So they've been without 2 out of the 3 of their best players on the court. They've gone 10 straight games without Jimmy Butler, and prior to last night, they had gone 7 straight games without Tyler Hero. Butler has missed 12 out of the team's 18 games this season, and even last night, the Heat were without Avery Bradley, Andre Iguodala, Goran Dragic, and company. So a big portion of their bench has also been in and out sporadically. They've been relying a lot on their 2-way contract players, Gabe Vincent and Mark Strokes, I think his name is. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But even so, a lot of other teams have also been dealing with their stars and their bench players coming in and out of the lineup. I think the Heat have definitely been one of the teams that have been affected the most by this, obviously being 10 games without Jimmy Butler, 7 without Hero, and of course Jimmy Butler has missed all those games previously. And, a lot of your free agency acquisitions or retains like Miles Leonard, Avery Bradley has missed a couple of games. Andre Iguodala has been in and out. And some of these haven't just been health and safety protocols. Some of them have been legitimate injuries. So, really, it's just been Bam Adebayo for the most of the season, and as good as Bam Adebayo is, he can't get it done by himself, especially as a big man. Now, there are dominant big men in the league. Anthony Davis, obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if you classify Kevin Durant as a big man. I mean, he's tall, but obviously he's a wing player. There are some pretty dominant big men in the league, but the dominant majority of players that are considered superstars and world-class players typically play in the front court, they play in the back court at small forward, shooting guard, point guard positions. So, it's very hard to dominate in today's NBA at the power forward and the center position. So even though Bam Adebayo is a fantastic player and he's been playing pretty much every single game, it's hard for you to win games when you're feeding through the post all the time in a league that prioritizes volume shooting, three-point shooting specifically. And of course, there's also COVID. But every team is dealing with these inconsistencies, as I said, the NBA health and safety protocols. So it really begs the question, how much of a problem is it if the problem is also affecting other teams? COVID really is one of the things that is definitely impacting the Miami Heat. It's just not one of the things that you would prioritize as saying what's wrong with the Heat, because COVID is affecting every single NBA team. The real crux of the problem with the Miami Heat is simply that they are just not playing well at all, offensively and defensively. Duncan Robinson seeing a downturn from three-point percentage. He's gone from 44% to 40%, even though they're shooting about the same shooting percentage overall from three-point range as they were last year. Duncan Robinson is shooting worse, which is affecting them a little bit. Tyler Hero is experiencing a bit of a sophomore slump. Hasn't looked great apart from a 30-point performance against the Washington Wizards. But again, if you watch a lot of basketball, you'll know that the Heat really struggled again in that game against the Wizards. They needed to score close to 130 points to beat what is considered by most to be the worst team in the league. Overall, the team is still like 34% from three-point range, as I said. Field goal percentage is fine. They're still doing reasonably well when it comes to 2-point field goal percentage, but the team overall is taking and missing more three-pointers, up 5% in three-point attempts from last year at this point, and taking 9% less 2-point shots. So they're throwing up more threes. They're missing they're missing more three-point shots, and that is one of the reasons why the offense isn't gelling as well. But they're also turning the ball over exponentially more. They're up 16.8% in turnovers, and the Heat are the second worst team in the league in turnovers. But it's really also, that's fine. The offense for the Heat last season wasn't anything incredibly special to begin with. It was really their defense and their energy, the grittiness that the Heat played with that enabled them to go to the finals, and that just isn't anywhere to be seen this season. The Heat are the last in the league in total rebounds. They're 27th in steals, and they're 28th in blocks. And that's not good, obviously. So, in conclusion, if you asked me what's wrong with the NBA Heat, Nick, tell me what's wrong with the Heat. In conclusion, out of all the combination of things that we talked about, the team is without Jimmy Butler, who is their vocal leader. He's their tone setter on defense. He's the best player on the team. Maybe 1 and 2 with Bam Adebayo. It depends on who you ask. I think Jimmy Butler is probably the better player on the team. He's certainly the more experienced player on the team. The team was without their tone setter and vocal leader, Jimmy Butler. You're not practicing consistently with the same guys every single day. COVID's an issue, but it's an issue with everybody. The team is shooting way too many threes for a team that is not good at shooting. Three-pointers specifically. And the defensive intensity that made the Miami Heat a finals surprise last season is not there. It's nowhere to be found. And that in of itself is why the Heat are struggling this season. And sure, there is time to get it going and time to turn it around. But the reality is that the inconsistencies that are provided by the coronavirus are not going to go away. People are going to be in, people are going to be out. It's more of a fundamental issue. It's more of a coaching issue. I don't think necessarily Coach Spoelstra is coaching the team poorly, but the defense needs to improve. I think defense is something that gets better when you have chemistry with everybody, and if you're not practicing with the same people, your defense is going to suffer. But again, I don't consider COVID to be enough an excuse as to why the Heat are playing this way. Again, I think Jimmy Butler being out is the main crux of the problem, but it's not all on Jimmy Butler. The Heat just have to play better defense. The Heat are not the best shooting team in the world. They're not going to light you on fire. Obviously, they do have the capacity to light you on fire with Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Bam Adebayo's jump shot is coming along really nicely. But it's the defense that makes the Miami Heat who they are. And as I said earlier, last in the league in total rebounds, 27th in steals, 28th in blocks. They're not playing defense. They're not going to win games. And that's just the way that it is. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.